y'all, this is Elle on Wheels. Welcome to my channel. This is my first shore stop on my Eurodam Christmas cruise in San Juan. We arrived at San Juan on Christmas Day at about 8 p.m. and we were in port the entire day, next day, and we left at about 10 p.m. on the 26th. I went to the Ron Del Barrilito rum tour. We did a rum tour and a rum tasting. It was a very good day. I got off the ship at about 10 a.m., walked down to Walgreens, got myself some Monsters, called for my Uber, and happens to be right around the corner from the Walgreens is where I met my Uber, and then I Ubered to Ron Del Barrilito, where I did the tasting and factory tour.
I'm gonna be your host. My name is Valeria. So if you have any questions, let me know, and of course you can take pictures during the tour. Now our first stop, as we head here, we're going to go towards the right. We're going to visit the house to cover more about the history, and we're going to be visiting the factory. Of course, I mean, it's some really good rum, of course, and it's the oldest in Puerto Rico. So Ron Del Barrilito has been in production since the 1800s, but before the rum itself, this hacienda or estate was already established in 1787. The Fernandez family first established here back then, and this was one of the largest sugarcane estates on the island. The first family member, Fernando Fernandez, was a privateer for the Spanish crown, and because of his services, he was bestowed with the grounds. So that's how they established here. Now, they used to process the cane mainly for sugar. So they did a lot of exporting of sugar initially, but eventually they started producing rum. The rum was not refined. So this was kind of more like a moonshine. It was more for the family, for consuming here, for visitors. But by the third generation is when it became Ron Del Barrilito. Now this is actually the family residence. You can tell it's more of a Spanish building. This construction of the house started in the late 1700s as well. So it's over 200 years old. The whole house is built in brick. There's some brick exposed, for example, at the bottom of the steps here. The rest of the house is all stucco. Someone still lived here until 2022. So it was the 5 generations consecutively living here in the home. And this has become now more of our museum. Unfortunately, the last person who lived here, he did pass away. He was the grandson of the founder, but it was until then that they decided this would become more the museum rather than them living in it. So since the construction is quite different, I will say, guys, the steps are a bit steep. When we reach the top, the columns are actually pretty short. People were much shorter back then. So you gotta be careful with those. Okay. So when we reach the top, try to stay in the middle. And of course, we'll cover a little bit more about the beginnings up here. So there is a small step coming in.
That brings flashbacks.
It's like going back in time.
We grew up on the old grandparents that this kind of story.
See? Very popular in like the 1960s, 50s. That's the master bedroom here, front of the house. So you can see some of the furniture, the bed, the dressers. I mean, they preserved the house pretty well too with the things that they kept here in the antiquities. Which wasn't even completely finished, so it didn't have the top part. The tower that's outside, that's the second oldest building here. Built in 18. It was a windmill. In 1827 they built it, but on the inside it was the sugarcane mill. So that is where they used to process the cane back then. To get the juice, exactly. right over here too. So his name was Pedro Fernandez. So he was the creator of Ron Del Barrilito. His wife Maria Latimer is here on the right side, and she was a descendant from another sugarcane estate nearby as well. Now, for this generation, as I mentioned, this was third generation of the Fernandez family since establishing here. Rum wasn't new, so it's something that already they made. But the difference with Pedro is that in the 1860s, he actually visited, or not visited, he studied in France, in the Central School of Paris. He studied chemical engineering. So this is where he learned about the techniques. Now, he was also very much inspired with the making of brandies and cognacs in France. So he wanted to learn about these techniques into making something much smoother and of more quality. Pedro did perfect making cognacs while in France, and eventually, once he graduated, he decided to come back to the island. So this was around in 1871. He started producing his rums here as a hobby. He was a civil engineer, but of course kept the tradition of sharing the rum with friends and visitors. That's how, of course, people started noticing that there was a change in the rum. This was much more improved, this was a lot smoother, and the way that Pedro shared it was also very particular, because he had barrels that he kept in the house. But up here in the living quarters, he had some very small barrels. So a smaller vessel is going to have a lot more flavor in less time. So Pedro would have the barrel that basically he'd carry around and open the little spigot and give you rum directly from it. So people always came back asking if he had more rum of the little barrel that he would share with them. And that repetition is what gave it the name, Ron Del Barrilito, which means rum from the small barrel, quite literal. So with that tradition, he decided then to establish his brand because people did want to buy his rum. So in 1880 is when he commercialized it. So this is the oldest rum brand on the island. Now, it wasn't until 6 years ago that we started exporting the rum. Always family owned, always just for the locals, but now of course we've increased production and started growing a little bit. It's still, very manual process, but with the family, 2 generations followed his footsteps. But it was only a few family members, a couple of other employees, so the production had actually decreased. And with the same space, we basically doubled in production these last few years. Now, in the near future, we're probably going to be building more aging rooms to store a lot more barrels. The 2 generations that followed after Pedro, if we take a look on this wall over here, we're going to get to see them. His son, Edmundo Fernandez, is the gentleman on the left portrait. So he was the second rum maker in the company, who also had the challenge of the prohibition. But the family did make a rubbing alcohol on the side since the 1800s. So they kept a lot of production of alcoholado during that time, and of course eventually they got back into the rum. Now, Edmundo's wife, Ruth Manero, is on the right portrait. They're both in the middle picture here with their 7 children, 1 daughter and 6 sons. They were the 3rd generation that also continues the business, but like you mentioned, 7 years ago, they sold some of the shares since not everybody in the family is involved. And like I said, it was a very small staff, so the production of rum was actually pretty low. With the same space, now that we have the money coming in and we start buying more barrels and all that, we basically doubled within the same space. And like I said, probably in the near future we'll be building more, so we can have more storage on the site. Well, we have around 4,000 barrels right now on the property. And they're quite large barrels. We're going to see them later, so I'll explain. So you guys can take a look around and get photos. In the dining room, you will notice there are a few different bottles and other sizes that they used to produce. Now we make all one size on the bottles of rum. There's 2 plastic bottles over here of the rubbing alcohol that they used to make as well, and there's one of the barrilitos. So feel free to look around, guys. If you have questions, of course, let me know. grab one of those and break it up. Fortunately, there's not a lot of sugarcane left on the island anymore, mainly because of industrialization and because of prohibition. So right now on the island there is a bit, but not enough for all the production of rum. So we do a lot of importing, whether it's sugarcane juice or the molasses, or we can also buy the distilled white rum. Now in this factory, because we are pretty small, what we do is we import the white rum from Dominican Republic. So we send the distillery the formula, they make it for us, and then we ship it in. The rest of the process, we're gonna do it on site. In terms of the chemistry of it, it has to be certain parameters that it has to meet for it to be the same white rum. Otherwise that could change up a little bit and it wouldn't be our formula. The rest of the process of what makes it into Ron Del Barrilito is the tanks back there. That's where we store the white rum. And by the way, when they no longer use the windmill, Edmundo turned it into his office. So that's why we see his initials above the door. And we still use it as a conference room. Don't get me wrong, it's air conditioned now and it has Wi-Fi too. Okay? So it's upgraded. Basically just letting it be. How long? Right now we're actually aging from 3 to 35 years. So we're gonna find some of the oldest rums on the island here because of course the size of the barrels allows us to get that far. Not that it was planned, but if the family produced a certain amount of rum, they were not exporting, and maybe the demand wasn't growing by a whole lot, a lot of products stayed behind. Now with our new management, you find rums that are over 20, over 30 years. So we want to use that product because it's just evaporating. So that's when we started producing our 4- and 5-star rums recently. Now, for example, in ages, they're all over the place, but this one is from 2019. So this is not that old. Here we have 2003, so this is a more decent amount of age, but look at this here. 85. From 1985. So yes, there are rums older than 35 years, but that's something that we can still use. With evaporation, of course, this is probably down here with rum. You know, maybe a little more, maybe. To be honest, right now it actually feels nice in here. There are some days that you come in here and it's like walking into a sauna. The humidity and the heat is just so high, and the evaporation, of course, is a lot more. But we have to blend a lot of these barrels together in order to have the consistent flavors, like when you make a recipe. So that's why you'll hear me later talking about the blends. For example, if I say this is around 4 to 7 years, it's because we typically use from 4 to 7 year rums. That does not mean that you can't add anything older. Sometimes, if for flavor or color we're missing something, we're gonna look for it in rum. We don't do any caramel coloring, no nothing like that, no sugar extra added at the end. It's all from our own rum. So a very natural process. And also talking about that, the water that we use here is rainwater. So we actually harvest and filter it. Left it for more time because the blender can come in and taste this for a blend. If this doesn't have the flavors, you have to leave it. You don't know when you're gonna use it. Maybe use it in 5 months later, or maybe 5 years later.
I got you.
Well, I mean, since we only make 1 or 2 batches a month, we're checking it only a couple times a month. And that doesn't mean they're checking this one every month. At that moment, if they're not producing anything of this age, this is just gonna stay here. What we did start producing since last year for the first time was single cask rum. We hadn't made that before. Last year they launched the first single cask. That means if let's say they tasted this one and it was really good, they're like, let's not blend it. Let's just put this all in a few bottles and whatever came out, we're gonna sell it as it is. You can't replicate it, so that's gonna be one of a kind. And of course it's gonna have a higher price. It's in something more for collectors. But we have just made our second this year in November that we launched. But that's something that we're starting to use these rums for too, because they have been here for so much time. And we're still losing part of it, but we can't do much about it. You literally have to let it sit. Yes, sometimes they've opened empty barrels, and it's a shame, but unfortunately, you have to leave it in the heat. So we are gonna continue further down.
After the aging room, I started to have some technical difficulties. I think my camera overheated on me, so I don't have the entire tour from this point forward, but I have parts of it.
The cork that's on top of the barrel will release like a pressure cooker basically, and release that. The single cask we just produced, that was the barrel that was in here. Alright, so here I'm going to show you the oldest barrel. That's why we're headed this direction. The oldest one is quite an exception because it's been here for 72 years. From 1952 was a rum made by Edmundo Fernandez in the year of our constitution on the island as a Commonwealth. He was actually a believer of the independence of Puerto Rico, so that's why he made this rum. He filled a few barrels with the idea that they would stay here aging, and eventually the family would get to open them up in our town square, but only the day that Puerto Ricans celebrate their independence. It was a collection, and the rum mostly evaporated. The family wanted to kind of extend the life of the rum, so they did consolidate the product from the collection of barrels. There's a very small amount left here, and probably at this point, maybe it doesn't taste that good anymore, because it's gonna be that very sweet, sticky stuff as we've seen around. But it's more the symbolism of the barrel now. So this one, the barrel, we call her La Doña. So she's like the matriarch of the family here. So I mean, with or without rum, this is always gonna be a symbol of our hacienda.
Yeah.
So this one is always gonna be here.
Nice.
So that's why La Doña is still there waiting.
Right.
If you want. All right, welcome in. Now, this is actually the initial part of our process. We've already seen the aging, which is, of course, one of the most important parts, where it's going to age for many years and gather all the flavors and smoothness. But we have something proprietary to our brand, which Pedro learned in France. When we bring in the white rum that's imported, typically to make that dark rum, we just pass it directly in the barrel. But here we're actually going to first put it in these tanks, which are also white oak.
This is the final stage of the production. It's where they're going to bottle and package all of the rums to be shipped, whether they're shipped locally in Puerto Rico or internationally, wherever they're going to go. This is the final step.
So in cisterns like that right there on the floor is where we collect the rainwater. So filtered and demineralized, and I mean, it's our natural water here. It's
At the end of the factory tour, we did return to the visitor center for the tasting portion of our tour.
when they bottle, they do have to save a few bottles of that blend for reference for when you make this another batch of the same rum. You will compare them side by side in terms of the color, consistency, the viscosity, the taste. So that way, you know, it's the same thing essentially, and it's not 100% the same, but it's consistent to where the consumer can't tell that there's a difference. So you're basically replicating each time. Now that's why when if you make a single cast, that's something unique that you cannot replicate in the future. But here where you're going to be tasting is going to be different blends. Now if you look on the mats, you're going to see the stars right in front of the glasses. So that's basically your guide. We are going to go from left to right. But before we do start, water, guys, is always important in a tasting. You have the water bottles, that's fine to use, and if not, or you want something more room temperature, that's just a recommendation here, guys. But to be honest, this is not everything. So this is not gonna numb your throat. This is on a very different level. So as you can see, you have the 4 rums. We're gonna be starting on the left side, and the first one that we're gonna be having here is the Barrilito 2-Stars. The 2-Star was actually the second rum in the company, which was created by Edmundo. So after the Prohibition, he decided to make a younger blend so he could release it faster in the market. But also after Prohibition, we had the boom of cocktail making. So we introduced this as a mixing rum. It was more strategic too. But to be honest, starting off with a 2-Star, it's much smoother than typical young rum blends. This one is from 3 to 5 years, bless you. So it's almost like a gold rum, but maybe with a little bit more flavors of the wood, some hints of the spices, maybe even hints of like vanilla, or some sweet notes, maybe as like honey notes. So whenever you guys want to check out the 2-Star, you can start grabbing your glasses if you want to take a look at it and start nosing it. In the beginning, this may smell more like the alcohol. So you definitely get a little bit more of that essence of the ethanol, but like I said, you can pick up some light sweet.
But it's sitting.
They've had it here for a couple of minutes already, so it's gotten a little bit of air to it. Now for this one, you can definitely see how it kind of seems stronger in aroma. When sipping it, it's honestly a bit spicy, where you feel a lot more tingling in the front of the mouth, probably on the lips. On the tongue, it kind of feels like a little bit of heat, and it may slightly burn a little bit in the back. But when you do the exhale, It gets spicy again in the front, but it's now warm in the back instead of like burning. Salud. This one to start, I mean, it's a really good rum. Many people expect it to burn a lot more, but it's actually quite pleasant, even as a sipping. You can also have it with a bit of water, where people sometimes add a few drops of water, because it's diluting it, or you can have it with ice. For me, like I said, it's like a light honey, like a pretty light note of sweetness, but you still get one of that alcohol presence. The wood maybe has a light smokiness to it, but it's not too bold. If we were to mix this one, it's a great replacement for gold rums and for white rums too. Because white rum, the difference is, it doesn't age that long either, but they filter it after the process to remove the color. This is gonna be a pretty light color, probably even lighter than this, like a straw color. So by filtering it, you're just removing color from it, and that's it. It's more strategic in marketing, because white rum competes mainly with vodka, gins, tequilas. Now this 2-star, in mixing, it's great for making, you know, in like a cubanita, Coca-Cola. You can also make daiquiris, piña colada, even mojitos. Trust me, in a mojito, this is gonna be a lot smoother because it gives it that nice flavor and it's not just the taste of alcohol. Now, with the difference, of course, of age, you're gonna notice they do become a lot smoother. And that's gonna be the case already with the second one. This is actually the original blend that Pedro created in the very beginning. So here we have the 3-star. It's still number 1. This is the one that we make every month. So for the 3-star, we have a blend that goes from 6 to 10 years. This one, you're definitely gonna notice that it has a smokier profile, definitely sweeter as well. So if you guys wanna grab the glass to nose, this, you can tell there's more of that wood presence. If you like whiskeys, this has more similarities to that. See, it's a little bit like thicker, a little bit creamier in the viscosity.
It hangs longer in the glass.
It does feel a little bit heavier as well. But I think you guys may enjoy this one a lot more. There's a lot more flavor.
Smell of this. Yeah, it smells really good.
And it's like a buttery texture to it, almost. Now it creates more of a coating on the mouth, so it kind of just remains there for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So you can really get more of like that caramel. Yeah. What are we thinking, guys? This one is nice and like warm, not that heat.
This one.
The 3, I don't know if you guys get this, but like I said, kind of like a caramel.
I was gonna say caramel is what comes to mind.
Maybe vanilla, but in smell, right away, I get butterscotch.
Yeah.
But you can definitely feel like even the creaminess on the mouth, it's a little heavier, but it's so good. So this one is great for just sipping on its own. If you wanted to have a big ice cube here, it's great because it won't melt that fast, so you can just enjoy it chilling it that way, or the whiskey stones, it's another option. Now, also with mixing the 3-star, old fashions, rum Manhattans, rum Negronis. You can also make piña coladas and daiquiris with this one. I mean, it mixes very well, even the juices. Even if it's smoky and all, it's a great mixing rum. So guys, this one has a lot of versatility. So the 3-star can be used in many, many ways. And for these special occasions, unfortunately, we don't want to share this with everyone. Something we have more, you know, for a special event. We have it from time to time, and you want to store it in a dark place like a cabinet, no light coming in because it can evaporate with time, even in a bottle. These were made in 2018, the 5-star, and in 2019, the 4-star. So first was the 5, then the 4. The 4-star was released the year that we inaugurated this visitor center. So they decided to make it as our exclusive rum of the hacienda that you can only buy here. A few stores may have it around the island, but it's because they have to buy it direct from us if they want to resell it. Our distributor doesn't work with this one. So the 4-star has a different label. They have their own number here in the front, and you can see that there's a photo of the house. So for this 4 Forester is also sealed with the hot wax. It's all done manually. This blend goes from 10 to 20 years. So now we can see quite an increase on the aging. This one, a lot of people compare it more to the cognac or brandy taste. It's definitely leaning more towards that type of flavors, more fruits, so you can probably get more of that maceración presence. It also has a lot more of that wood because I mean, up to 20 years in the barrel, definitely you're gonna taste more of that boldness. And I mean, kind of syrupy. So in the beginning for me, I get a lot of nose on like syrup. So let's see what you guys think. We're making this one still continuously. So it's one, because it's exclusive to the island, we're able to, keep producing a decent amount. I'm not sure in what number we're at right now. I think we're actually in the 9,000s already since we started producing it. It's very silky, like the feeling is just like very soft on the mouth. It kind of goes down like water, right?
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
I know, I was gonna say that.
Because it's super, it's thicker, but it's just that coating it creates, but it's pleasant. What we do with the 4-star though, because we don't bottle it in the machinery that we saw. In the gift shop here, there is a little station in the back where there's a big barrel and it's full of 4-star. It is stainless steel on the inside, so the rum doesn't age with the wood.
More, yeah.
But when they make the blend, if we're running low here, they bring it, they fill that barrel, and we have to do all the bottling from there. So that means we use what they call a thief, which is a cylinder that we drop inside the barrel. We're gonna fish it out. We're gonna pour that inside the bottle. Then we put the cork, we dip it in hot wax, and we seal it at the top and put a stamp. So the 4-star, if visitors want to buy their own, they can bottle it themselves. We have a log of all the bottles we've made, and if you do it yourself, for example, you're gonna log it in with your name and everything with the number of bottles. So it's like you're the owner of this bottle, it's right there on the book. As you guys have seen, super delicious, very smooth. So definitely no mixing with Coca-Cola or anything like that. Now I'm gonna be introducing the last one. And this one is also very unique. I will say though, it kind of has some similarities to the 3-star in my opinion, but in a different way. The 5 was made 6 years ago. They only made over 5,000 bottles in this batch. They have not created another blend of 5-star. So at this point, this one is unique. It's the only ones that we made from the batch, and that's it. That's in the market. 6 years later, and look at the evaporation. And it's in air conditioning. But this is what happens after some time. This blend is from 20 to 35 years. That's a career in a bottle, basically. So for this one, this is definitely something that also on occasion, it's much bolder because of course all those years in the barrel once again. It has for me that kind of butterscotch and vanilla like the 3-star, but in a different way. The wine has more presence here. That's been sitting in the barrel absorbing more of the wood. So you can get maybe more of those port notes, more of that dryness of like a wine, and maybe more hint of fruits, the maceración. So for this one, guys, 20 to 35 years, enjoy, happy holidays. Whatever's out there in the market is what's left.
So, yes.
Lift, put it closer to I know, put it closer.
This one's pretty like robust. Like you can definitely tell it's like heavier. Pretty heavy. And the color is almost more like red. With more amber red colors to it. The dryness, like a wine, is what I get too. It's like you can really feel it there on top of the tongue. But it's not like a super dry taste. But as you can see, it's, they're very different. They have a lot of similarities, but each one is quite unique. But it's all about the blend that's created at the end. They all have the same start. So it's interesting how you can make so many like variations of the roundness. So I do also have something else for you guys. As completing are tasty. You guys also get your own certification now. So now you're official tasters of Barrilito. You can put this on your LinkedIn if you want. I mean, it's experience, guys. So, Julie. You have the signature of the master blender here at the bottom too, Luis Blanes.
Oh, right.
So he's our current blender. He's the one that the rum was made by the Fernandez family. It was there, but he's the one that created the finished product. So nice, sweet. So. And we have a trash can right here, just in case. But very creamy. Like I said, dessert. This can be dangerous, but it's really, really good. So the coquito, we have it available here in any case. We also have coquito at the duty free shop at the airport. We have a couple of the other rums around here around the store. You guys can fill your own bottle? Yes.
I did splurge and bottled my own 4-star. 4-star was by far the best rum in the rum tasting. I know she said that she thought they were in the 9,000s, but actually my bottle number is 10,868. It was a really cool experience. I got to bottle it, which you can see pretty well in the video. And then I dipped it in the wax and put a stamp on the top. That's not really visible in the video. The tour did include a drink. I had the smoked rum old fashioned. It was very, very good. After that, I just toured around the gift shop. So the rest of the video is just some pictures from the gift shop area. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Thanks.